Welcome to Modified Dreams Not Deterred. I am Judith. I was having a conversation the other day with two people, and we were talking about establishing friendship in the workplace, not just collaborating with our fellow co-workers and teammates, but being able to establish some sense of friendship outside of the space of work. But whether or not you're a line staff or you are in upper management, how easy is it to navigate the space of spending 40 hours a week with a team and being able to have some sense of friendship outside of the space of work? How many of you are able to say, I've been working with a company for 20 years and I've made some good friends? Believe it or not, it's quite common for people to feel a lack of belonging outside the space of the regular routine of we spend 40 hours at a job for so many years. We're able to work together. We're probably one of the go to people, and people can reach out to you. But do you actually have connections with the people you work with outside of the space of work? So while having the conversation, I remember the point being made that do we actually share a common goal? Or it's based on the experiences of joining an organization and observing behaviors of people who have worked together for years, who consider themselves to be friends, who has a shared interest of spending time together outside of work, yet in the space of work, they exhibit a behavior that is questionable to true friendship. And I totally understand that because when you join an organization, when you start working in any particular setting, you are observant at first. It's timid. It's trying to get used to where you're working, getting to know people, what their interests are, what our communication skill are, whether it be nonverbal or verbal. And so there's so much that goes into the whole thought process of allowing someone to truly cross those lines of friendship outside of work, or more so a 40-hour collaboration of being co-workers. Are we seen as perfectionists and not people? Again, during that conversation, quite a bit came up, and as I reflected on the conversation, I thought about some aspects that may impact how we form friendship in the workplace. Are we being vulnerable? There are times when someone might see you as being perfect, which means you're a high performer, you absorb things quite easily, you're adaptable, you're growing the organization, or you're just all business, which means you go in, you do your work, you don't gallivant, you fulfill the expectation of your job. Though you may have some struggles, you might not exhibit it to a point where your other coworkers notice. So they may see you as being more business than being human. Shared interest. There are some people that are into chit chat and they're not necessarily multitaskers. And then there are people who are multitaskers, which means you could be having a half an hour conversation and that person is half listening but is carrying out the job duties that they were employed to do. That is a strength that not everyone has because many times people will struggle with accomplishing the task at hand because they spend so much time having side conversation that they either make simple mistakes or by the time they realize that they're falling behind, it's almost the end of their shift. So, is someone more find it more easier to reach out to you if they have an issue in the workplace, if there's something they're not absorbing, that they need your knowledge to help them absorb the information, be efficient in their position? and fulfill whatever task it is, you might say, yes, of course, I'm the go to person. But are you the go to person? Are you open? Are you approachable for someone to invite you out for coffee? You may say yes. Have you accepted those invitations? And why haven't you accepted those invitations? Again, that's quite common. So sometimes I hear, well, I invited her for coffee, or I invited him out for coffee, but he did not accept the invitation. Some people take that personal, but I don't think it should be taken personal because it's a choice. Everyone has different obligations in life, and while there are others that likes the social network outside of work, there are people that just wants to go home and spend time with their family or just have a quiet space. Because depending on what sector you work in, there are times when a 40-hour work week is so exhausting, and depend on how you work with your team, you might not necessarily want to go out with that team to spend time with because your professional life with them is more important, because that can also be a very slippery slope. But connections are important. Another thing is, some people will say, well, if they talk about each other all the time at work, if you overhear gossip and all that stuff, do you really want to spend some time out of your day to go sit at a bar or a restaurant and pretend to like the association? That's an individual question, because there are going to be times when it's important that you associate yourself with your co-workers outside of work, and you have to learn to understand that whatever your assumptions are or your expectation of someone, it's an individual thing. So if at work we collaborate and we have a great working relationship, but outside of the space of work we do not have a friendship, I think it's okay as well. Because what your interest is might not be the same interest as someone else, but experience some sense of family in the workplace after many years are very important. That means if someone is grieving death, if someone is getting married, if someone is having a child, having your team members come together to celebrate those milestones are important. Or having those teammates come together to have compassion and empathy through that process of grief is important, because we spend most of our working and our awake life, so to speak, at the workplace, 40 hours a week. By the time you get home, if you have a spouse or you have a family, think about how many hours are you spending with them. So it's very important to think about those relationships and how you show up daily. But again, you can't really ignore the fact that not accepting casual conversation is sometimes because of a lack of trust. There are many times where someone has intuition in the workplace and they can see through someone's happy smile. They can see through someone's nosiness, seeking information so that they can have a discussion. They can see through someone's kindness with intention, because there are people who are genuinely kind, but then there are people who extend kindness as a way to get as much people to like them or people to want to be on their side. So what do you do in a case where your intuition gets the best of you? Do you observe these same coworkers gossiping about other people? If so, it is very hard for you to trust someone that exhibits characteristics that you yourself does not appreciate or does not stand for. But sometimes it is important to know that even those people deserve to have some sort of friendship, deserve the association outside of work if you so decide to extend the invitation to that person or accept an invitation from that person. Because I believe if one stands true in their character, in their thoughts, in the way they show up, many times through you being authentic, you can impact someone else to reconsider or reevaluate the way they themselves has been showing up in the workplace. There are some very serious qualities, I would say, individual qualities that can cause a sense of loneliness in the workplace. Some of us are introverts, some of you are introverts, right? We may seem social in certain settings where we are positioned to do so, but you have a lot of people who are introverts. They like their space, they're like just kind of decompressing. So there's some people who enjoy going to the lunchroom when it's their lunch break and they'll sit and chat for an hour. And there are other people who just need their space because they need to decompress. They want to just go to their car and have their lunch and just meditate or just take a breather or go for a walk around the block. It doesn't mean that they're antisocial, it just means that each individual knows what works best for them, and so that should be respected. It should never be a fact that she doesn't sit with us or she doesn't eat with us. It may just be in order for that person to be their best self, they need to step away and take that moment to rejuvenate. But what happens when there's a sense of loneliness and lack of belonging in the workplace? Has any of have any of you who's watching this video experience a sense of loneliness in the workplace? How did you handle it? Because I don't think this is such a rare feeling that is experienced in the workplace, whether you are among line staff or upper management, where you're collaborating with a team, but there's no sense of any connection beyond the professional level. How do you navigate that space? Do you stay purposeful with knowing that you are placed in a particular place for a period and there is a duty for you to carry out? Do you allow yourself to be vulnerable so that someone else can understand that there's depth beyond your work ethics? How do you experience trust? Or how do you navigate that space? Feel free to comment below. Make it a conversation, right? Because I think many times many of us are experiencing so many things and it's not a one size fit all. But how do you function if you have been in an organization for a long time, or maybe you're just there for a year or 6 months? How do you cope with a sense of not feeling like you belong outside of the space of showing up for your work and completing the task at hand? Yes, many will say, I just go there to work. I just go there to work and I leave and go home. But many times, how do you feel that Sunday nights before your first week back? Do you feel pumped that tomorrow is Monday and I'm going back to work with my team? Or are you feeling a sense of, it's just work, before you know it, it's Friday? How do you process those emotions? How do you get uncomfortable? And what do you do that has proven to work, where it has allowed you to have more connections? And if you're saying it doesn't matter, but if you have been with an organization for 40 years or 30 years, I think it does matter, especially if there has not been a great amount of turnover in your workplace and you have been seeing these people for years. If you have kids or parents or siblings, whatever the reason is, these staff members or team members have seen you grow, I've seen you aged, I've heard of your experiences, or maybe you are secretive, or maybe you keep everything to the bosom so you feel a sense of isolation. What are those experiences? Social events, informal connection matters. I totally agree with that. And as a person that is not necessarily a social butterfly in any sense of the word, I do believe that having some sense of informal connection is important. Because not only do we help our team members to maximize their potential if you're in leadership, or just in general, if you're a line staff, you're impacting your team maybe by your sense of humor. What is it that you're bringing to the table? But outside of that space, having some informal connection is important. It's important because it gives you a sense of belonging. It's important because laughter in the workplace is important. It's important because you get to kind of touch base with people. How was your weekend? How's your mom doing? Oh, I like that dress. You should wear that more often. Oh, that extenuates. Do you have those conversations? One might ask, why is it important? I believe it's important because as we age, as we get older, we think about those connections. We no longer are so focused our tunnel vision on just working to take care of our families. Our children grow up, our parents age, life's responsibility shifts. And what else do you have to really balance life besides your spouse? Your spouse might have his or her own social connection. Do you have social connections at work? I think that is important. So then the question is, how do one connect socially outside of their workplace or outside of their profession? As an immigrant, many households were taught privacy. What happens at home stays at home. The less someone knows about you, the better it is for you. But in order to create some sense of friendship, people need to see a little depth in who you are as a person. Many of us have obstacles we have overcame. Many of us has dreams and goals and aspirations in life. Many of us have had experiences where someone betrayed our trust in the workplace. Many of us have seen and observed behaviors that were questionable. Many of us also has experienced different things with leadership. So they have impacted how we allow ourselves to give people a chance or an opportunity in our lives. So forming a group of professionals or navigating the space of whatever your interest is and hopefully finding like-minded people are important. But I'm just curious to know, have anyone else experienced that lack of connection in the workplace beyond the connection of collaborating to successfully complete your task that you were hired for? How do you navigate that space outside of not having those social connections? What are the tools? How has it worked for you? Do you think that culture, the way that we were brought up, faith, or personal choices impact how we make friends with co-workers outside of work? Or is it justifiable to say if my observation is the observation of hypocrisy, why would I allow myself to be in the midst of it? Or is it justifiable to say, in any situation, in any group, there's always at least one authentic person. But have you ever also take a step back and think about how are you being perceived? And by taking that assessment, were you able to reevaluate how you're showing up? Put it in the comment down below. So remember, you do not have to deter your dreams. You can modify them.